Recording 13. I can't stop. Hello. I don't really understand why, but I have to keep making these. It's not like I have much of a choice. Sorry. After my last letter, I thought it would stop. I moved in with my sister. I stopped my post. I didn't let anyone know I'd moved. Not even my friend Susan, who goes dog walking with me. I don't know how, but the letters continued to find me, coming through my sister Kelly's door. I burnt hundreds of them, but they didn't stop. I began to find them at the foot of my bed when I woke up. Kelly thought I was going mad. She threw out any envelope she had to try and help. It was chaos until they all stopped. They stopped arriving, stopped appearing. The police were happy to suggest that my letter stalker must have stopped. But I can't feel normal anymore. I was walking Dougal with Kelly when it started again. A tall young man had been watching us at the park. He seemed like a decent person, dressed in a blazer and jeans in this horrific new style of business casual. He had seemed terribly nervous, and Kelly had assumed he wanted to say hello to the dogs. I wish that had been the case. He took his chance to speak to me when Kelly was picking up dog waste. He had approached me quickly. He asked if I was Lisa. With caution, I replied that I was. At this, he erupted into tears, pulling me into a hug. It was an uncomfortably tight hug, as he must have been going through a lot. He pulled away, revealing a large envelope, which he gestured for me to take. He told me that his mother had passed away, telling him that he had to find me and make sure that I recorded her story. At this, I panicked and backed away from him. However, his look of despair made me feel sick. It was at this point that Kelly returned holding a poo bag limply. He pushed the envelope into my hands and insisted I record it before running off across the park. Kelly had been very understanding of the situation on the walk home. She said she'd keep the letter. That was until a small child had approached us with another letter for Lisa. On my way back to my sister's, we received about 3 more letters, all from strangers. Kelly was beginning to question reality and had demanded to know what the recordings were. She listened to me and came to the conclusion, the ridiculous conclusion, that I must be some sort of agony aunt for time travellers. Ridiculous notion. However, she insisted that I continue with them, as I could be helping people even if someone is after me. I found this childish and took the letters to the police, who were unhelpful yet again. One of them even had a letter for me, Sergeant Chalmers, who I'd known for years. He handed it to me without saying a word. I opened it and noted it as another one of these supernatural stories and threw it back at him. He insisted that he was just doing as his uncle had wished. He told me he didn't understand it, but just thought that it could help someone. Someone spurned him to deliver it. I went on holiday for a week to get over it all. I went to Scotland, far from everyone and anything. It was wonderfully quiet and still. I'd been exploring local ruins when I'd spotted some carved graffiti, some sweet messages to lovers long gone. As I looked along at the jagged lines, I noticed, stuffed between 2 bricks, a letter, a perfectly pristine envelope. I fumed, stomping over to it. I opened it. Here's what it read. Lisa, I'm sorry if this seems like too much to you. I know I found it hard from my side, but you need to keep doing what you're doing. I promise it's worth it. You'll need them later. Well, earlier. It's confusing, but trust me, it's going to work out in your favor. But I'm going to be selfish this time. This one time, I need you to listen to my story. This will be my one request. You owe me one. You just don't know it yet. Lisa, I'm Jessica. This is so strange. Writing our first introduction. It's not easy, is it? Last month I was waiting for a bus into town. I was going to a new job, and the boredom hadn't set in yet, so I was buzzing. New people, new stuff to learn. I was nearly hopping from side to side, willing time to speed up and get the journey started. As I stood there, bopping uptown funk, I noticed the wind whipping at my face that I hadn't noticed before. Taking my earbuds out, I listened for the sound of the wind through the trees. Weirdly, it wasn't there. The sound wasn't there. It was just not. I turned around several times and even closed my eyes to try and hear if there was any noise at all. There was the sound of a bird in the distance. This calmed me down a bit. A bit that was, until it got quite quiet. Then the wind started being audible again. Then the birds sounded. Then more noises I hadn't heard before. I stood there, my breathing becoming louder and heavier, even though I didn't change my breathing pace. I was calming down as the bus arrived, the driver giving me an odd look. The bus took longer than usual, due to some sort of signal failure on the rail line we had to cross. It caused me to be 5 minutes late, which my manager didn't mind, but built up my anxiety again. I was on edge for the rest of the day until work ended. I got the bus back and thought I'd call a friend. I'd been a bit lonely because my mum usually called me at lunch, but she hadn't. My friend Jake was always free. I'd never seen him actually doing something, unless it was making us honey, almost like if Winnie the Pooh was a stoner, except he wears trousers. Well, sometimes. I called him. He picked up immediately, as I thought he might, and I started rambling on at him about my day without giving him edgeways. I was just about to talk about this annoying ginger customer when I noticed he hadn't actually picked up yet. The ringer just wasn't making the beeping sound. I sat there confused, looking at my phone, sighing as I realized it must be broken. Another trip to the Apple store, I guess. I decided to call my girlfriend. I missed her, but she was at uni now, across the country. She didn't pick up, but the ringer was working for her. I tried calling other people, thinking could just be my mate's phone playing up, but my mum's dial tone was also missing, along with my neighbours Becky and Franklin. As the bus trundled along, the sound of the town was fading, as one would expect. However, it wasn't being replaced by the noises of the woods and the villages nearby. Usually the birds would be going mad, especially as it was summer and bright outside for the majority of the day. I wasn't the only one noticing this. Several other passengers started looking up from their phones, books and newspapers to peer out of the windows. We were all searching for a reason for the lack of any sound from the space we were moving towards. It wasn't brought up, however, until the noise of the bus stopped. The low, mumbling noise of the shoddy old lights and the engine's breathy wheezing slowly decreased in volume. Then an old lady got up and came over to me, prodding my shoulder. "Excuse me, but have you noticed the—" She kept talking, but no sound was coming from her. That's when panic truly began to set in. Not just the bewildered looks from people trying not to interact, but find out what's happening. Everyone had heard her at the start of the sentence, but the minute she stopped being audible, others jumped up. A group of teenagers at the back of the bus began what was probably shouting and screaming, but there was no noise. People began throwing things and slapping the windows. However, none of this made a sound. I tried to make phone calls, but none were working now. My girlfriend picked up, but I couldn't hear her. And of course, don't know if she could hear me. People were going manic, getting up into others' faces to try and see if anyone was able to hear. The old lady was still poking me when the bus suddenly stopped. The driver ran off down the road, leaving us there. We watched him until he had turned the corner with no sound coming from him. It was like he never existed. The rest of us sat there a bit lost, uncertain as to what to do now. One of the teenagers produced a notebook and pen and began writing on it, showing signs to us. "Can you hear?" they wrote. Others began doing the same with their books, newspapers and phones. The conversation was slow, but it calmed most of us down. One of the teenagers couldn't seem to sit still, though. He wrote in his maths textbook, "Can you hear that?" None of us could hear anything. We asked him to describe what it was, and he couldn't. He seemed irritable, unable to sit. His friends physically tried to hold him down. Nothing seemed to calm him. He wrote over and over again, "Can you hear it? What is it? Why can't you hear it?" He walked up and down the bus trying to get us to say that we heard whatever it was. He seemed to think it was getting louder. We were all still trying to deal with the lack of sound, and this one boy wasn't the worst worrying aspect for the most of us. We should have stopped him. But how could we have anticipated? We decided that perhaps we should leave the bus. He refused, due to the sound being out there, referring to the outside the bus. We tried to calm him, but instead he ran out of the bus. We watched him run down the road the same way the driver had. We didn't hear the truck. We couldn't hear the truck, or anything else for that matter. A Tesco delivery truck hit the boy. His body skidded across the tarmac and into the woods. We all gasped in shock. Then we cried as we realised the sound was back. The intense return to a reality with sound was uncomfortable in itself, like coming up from being underwater for a long time. We all felt ill after realising the boy was dead. We'd run out after him to see if he was all right, but most of us shouldn't have. It was too much for his friends, and one of them fainted. The strange sound loss time was apparently not just endured by us. My village had apparently been experiencing the phenomena all day, with other accidents, most less horrific, happening due to it. I don't know what this means. I don't know why it started, or more importantly, why it stopped. Why it stopped just then. We never found out what he was hearing. That's what really messes with my mind when I think about it. I'm sorry, Lisa, but I really need your help to find out what this was. It's been driving me crazy. Can't sit in a quiet room anymore. My family has noticed that I hum when it's quiet. Please let me know what you think about this. So please never stop recording these. I know that it's putting you in danger. More danger than you can imagine. But if you don't record these, or hadn't recorded these, then the universe would be far more dangerous. I hope I can see you again one day. We'll go for a coffee. Do something more human. All the best in the world, Jessica. Well, looking up from this, I noticed that the carving above it was also addressed to a lease, an A being worn down, that it was now invisible, but it was undoubtedly meant for me. The carving was too faded to read, but I realise now that these people, so many of them, are relying on me to just record their stories. They want help. I don't know how this is doing that, but if I'm assisting at least 5% of them, then that's someone better off because of me. I realise that whatever this danger, whoever this Jennifer is, I've got too many people counting on me for me to stop these. Thank you, Jessica. I think I should like to have a coffee with you in the future or past. But as usual, I have no clue as to what you should do. Have you tried therapy? It could help. That was Recording 13, I Can't Stop. Written by Phoebe Critchlow. Read by Caroline Lawrie.